Hello.
Today's conversation with Idara is an overdue one I've been looking forward to having for a long time, almost as long as I've actually known Brooke Collins. And so I'm glad that this conversation happened today. And we cover quite a lot, from the discussion of workplaces, the role of confidence in leadership and how it shows up in how leaders respond to input and to feedback, the definition of confidence, and somehow when definitions and attributions are not necessarily the same. The conversation runs the gamut, and it was a wonderful conversation to have. And I'm excited to introduce to you this next confidence conversation with Idara with Brooke N. Collins. Enjoy. Okay, here we go. Another episode of Confidence Conversations with Idara. And today I am talking with Brooke Collins. Brooke, welcome to Confidence Conversations with Idara.
Oh, thank you. I'm excited to be here and talk to you. It's been a long time coming.
I know. I'm so excited to have you. You know it's been a long time coming. As usual, I will start with an introduction, talk a bit about what you've done, and then give you the opportunity to do the same before we dive into the questions. So when I met you, you'd already been doing some consulting work in well-being. And it was twofold. You were working, employed in that capacity, but I was impressed to find out that you'd also been doing the same in your own work with HumanBn Strategies. I love the name HumanBn Strategies, and I love the description of the work. And you were the first person to make a distinction between wellness and well-being. And that's what a lot of your work has entailed. But taking it back to, if we do the typical resume thing of, let's look a little bit past 10 years or so, you have been doing some work as a group fitness coordinator. And then in your next role, in your next couple of roles, actually, you stepped into wellness program manager and project manager for a couple of different employers. And it was after that you stepped into a lead well-being consultant role. That was around the time that I met you also. And in your capacity when you were doing 100% the work of HumanBn Strategies, the best way to describe the work that you ended up doing was as a fractional well-being officer, where you partner with leadership in the organizations at all levels, senior leadership, middle management, operations, human resources, and so on, to partner with them and bring the vision to life, and also make sure that those strategies about well-being, employee well-being, the complete well-being of the employee were factored into strategy and built into the way that work was being done. In the meantime, you also have done hands-on wellness work with yoga, having been a yoga instructor at some point. And I love how you indulge in those aspects of your life. And you've also volunteered with Women's Medical Society for more than 5 years now. So that well-being work shows up in not just the work that you're doing, but also in how you're interacting with the community, all aspects of well-being. Is there anything in your career pathway that I've left off that we should be adding here?
I think the biggest component is the strategic side of the work that I do. It just so happens that I'm supporting the wellness infrastructure for organizations, but it's overall business strategy.
Yep.
Where any group that wants to invest in their most valuable asset, which is the people, they would bring me in. And so all facets of business require that you take a deep dive into the experience of the workforce, the needs of the workforce, and the resources that you're providing that workforce.
Yeah.
Not to mention the fact that you want to look at that environment that you're putting the workforce in. So no matter what tier in the organization you sit in, a conversation should be had with somebody who's thinking about your people structure and beyond human resources, right? Because human resources is policy. So you really want somebody that's thinking about the strategy of what the overall experience encompasses for your workforce, so that you're properly investing in that asset.
And you've probably found this to be the case, that when you articulate it, it's a no-brainer. What you're saying makes sense, but people haven't necessarily thought of it or thought of it that way before you came in the room.
I don't think, I try not to speak in totalities, but I'm going to speak in totality. That's never the case. And I'm often making a business case every single time for something that people should just understand. If your workforce is not getting their needs met, you're going to have high turnover. It's going to cost you a lot. There's going to be a lot of injury on the job. There's going to be a lot of underutilization of the benefits and rewards packages that you have. You're not properly investing in the workforce. But for the better part of 18 years now, I have been beating the same drum, and it's still not coming through for people.
It's
and
not automatic.
Yeah, it's actually, it can be a little bit sad, right? Because I feel bad for many of the places where their leadership isn't really servant. So they're not looking for those things. I feel really bad for organizations if there are groups where you work and they are just kind of trying to check a box.
Yeah.
It's always sad to me. And to your point about me making that distinction between wellness and well-being, I'll often know what I'm dealing with right away when somebody's coming in. If they don't know the difference between the two, they're often checking the box. And so when you think about wellness itself, it really is the infrastructure. It really is policy. It really is the environment. The well-being is the individual. How does that individual feel? How does that individual engage? What type of productivity are they producing? With the resources that you provide for them? How are you engaging with the workforce? So anytime I go into a group, they're using the words interchangeably. They are often looking to just say that they're doing a thing.
Yeah.
So again, I feel confident speaking in that totality, and that's why you're seeing all these rollbacks currently, where people are like, well, I don't have to do it anymore.
Right.
So now that I don't have to do it, they're not doing it.
and it really does require leadership buy-in. You know, you referenced servant leadership before, but besides, because oftentimes policies and the other elements that come to light are put in place because of how they benefit the business as well. That's really what makes it sustainable. That as altruistic as we want to be and as beneficial as things might be to the individual, it's usually the business case that's what's going to make it stick for a broader audience, in a manner of speaking. But even with that, some of the insights in hearing you talk about your work, you unearthed for businesses where some of this was already paid for. It wasn't so much that the funding wasn't there, it's in how it was applied, it's in how the policy itself was interpreted. So it was educational first in many of these situations.
Yeah, you know what's interesting too, and one of the first things I like to bring to organizations is that well-being is not an HR competency. No matter how much people want to make it a collective thing, they are actually in opposition of each other.
How so?
Because if you bring in someone who's considering the total health of your organization, they should actually be bringing in checks and balances. So if you say as an organization, this is your policy, these are your values, these are your tenets, there has to be somebody there that's actually balancing that.
Yeah.
So if you say this is your policy, okay, what things do you have in place for your middle management team to actually align with that? If you say that you don't want people calling people after a certain amount of hours, are you as a leader, not after a certain amount of hours, after a certain time of the day, are you as a leader taking phone calls at that time? Is there a policy in place that actually says this is the outcome if you are reaching out to our workforce beyond the business hours that we have set for this workforce? Or if you say, we want all of our people to take their sick time or take wellness days, and then you as a leader are showing up with the sniffles and running and making everybody So you need the checks and balances. What ends up happening, there's a conflict if you make it an HR function. Because now you're putting that person into a position where they may not necessarily even have any real authority. They're just there to kind of check the box. We'll go back to that. We'll just use that frame. They're there to check that box. And so it can be said that we care about we want it to appear that we care.
Yeah.
So when you're thinking about overall people strategy, we're not just talking about compensation. We're not just talking about the descriptions and the title. We're actually talking about how this individual functions within that workspace and out in the community. And typically, if they are cared for and their overall experience is taken into account in the workplace, because that's where you spend the majority of your time, then that trickles over to other aspects of life. So these are the same people that'll go and tell people how amazing your organization is to work for them. They'll go through and they'll pick organizations that they want to support with the volunteer hours that you've allocated as for individual employees to use wherever they like. And they'll go and say, the company I work for welcomes this, and they do these things, but you can't halfway do it. And there has to be accountability in it, and you have to think of it from a strategic standpoint. So carving out that wellness leg to address overall well-being has to be a function in and of itself that actually is more aligned with executive leadership than human resources. So you work with human resources as a partner and a collaborative aspect.
Okay. Yeah. And with you having to shed light on things, if it's not been the case, being the educator in this role, in addition to the strategic partnership, it really calls to mind that you have to be certain of yourself. You have to have a high degree of self-assurance, and that just lends itself right to this conversation about being confident in yourself, confident in what you're saying, in what you can do, and what's possible, because it's not always laid out in front of you. So you are often the one bringing it forward. How would you define confidence?
You know, I define confidence as knowing who you are and whose you are. So I'm a believer, and I just understanding that being true to myself will lead to authentic work. And so if I'm moving in that authenticity, it makes it, so I'll rephrase one other thing. I always say that the work won't be easy, but it can be simplified, right? So you're gonna have to do a little bit and dig. So if you are moving in authenticity, it makes it simplifies it when you're trying to get buy-in for things. And to make that business case that I have been making for 18 years with all the research that's out there, I'm still having to make the argument for doing this. And it's the first role that people want to cut. And then not only that, if they bring me in to assess and I show them the truth, more often than not, they're not happy that I that I showed them the truth.
Truth can be hard sometimes. The truth can be hard sometimes.
I've been actually pushed out of spaces for showing the truth and coming up with a solution to solve.
Yeah.
So, you know, these are all funny things. So you kind of have to, so that it doesn't become demoralizing for you. You really, really, going back to your question about what I think confidence is, knowing who you are, what you're bringing to the table, and then understanding whose you are. So I'm made in his likeness. And so when I'm doing that work, I'm giving him glory. Yeah. And that's what I can do. And my hope is that people will join on board and hopefully become advocates for it, and also becoming and if they become allies in it, and then just really believe in the mission and the values and truly want to live that aspect of it as well through their organizations and through their actions.
And it also makes business sense in the long term. But this is another reason why I often work on and emphasize confidence in leadership, because if people don't feel confident when they hear the truth, it might make them defensive, feel uncertain, or bring out insecurities, or feel a bit embarrassed, like you could have done better. But when you feel confident, you can take those sort of blows. You can absorb it and say, okay, this is the reality. Where do we want to be? Because there's an authenticity to the work that you're doing, and there's a certainty. You're like, okay, I know where I came from. There's a certainty, a self-assurance. So a lot of the reason why confidence matters in leadership, because confident leaders are more easily able to absorb things that were unexpected, unpredictable, and not take it personal, not take it as a personal slight, and adapt with the situation. I love your description of it. And you have used the word simplify in the opportunities that we've had to work together and in life in general. So confidence, knowing who you are, whose you are, which lends itself to you leading an authentic life and makes things not necessarily easy, but simplified. That's beautiful. I love that. And how can you share a time when being confident has made a difference in your career?
You know, it's been ongoing. When I started off, you mentioned my group fitness roots. I didn't know anything about yoga when I started teaching it. And interestingly enough, once I started teaching yoga, first of all, at that time, that was 2007, 2008, 2009. There wasn't a lot of Black women teaching yoga. I was teaching this at the University of South Alabama in Mobile. And what was interesting was watching leaders in the different divisions that I would work in or organizations I would go into try to put me into a box. So what they wanted me to do was teach hip hop. They wanted me to teach step aerobics. And I would have to say, no, I'm teaching yoga. And then when I was teaching yoga, then people would say, you should play R&B in your class. Have you told any other instructors to play R&B and rap in their class? Now there's a whole movement of trap yoga, right? But I will say non-Black instructors are the ones who basically Columbus, that had I done that as a Black woman, people would have made a whole thing about that. And so, you know what I mean? So in theory, yes, I could have said, I'm going to take this and make it more Black, so to speak. That's what they wanted me to do because
that's coming from outside. Yeah, that's not coming from you. What does it mean to be Black, right? It's when you talk about that box and people trying to put you in a box, that's not coming from you. That was not what you were putting together, but people are trying to put that on you.
And so that comes, so when you ask about like, when is that coming into place? Even then in my, early 20s, I was able to tell people, no, I don't do that. And there was one organization that I was working in after I got out of college. And I was, at the time, I had a Pilates certification, a mat Pilates certification, and yoga certification. And I was the only Black person on the team there. And the leader there made me teach every dance class, never forced anybody else to do it. So I would go in, learn these routines on top of all of my stuff. Mm-hmm. It's because people are insistent on making me fit their narrative or fit whatever biases they have about Black people and Black women. Yeah. And so as a result, what's happened is I am very firm in, okay, so I'll do this because I was new going into the organization. So I had to have confidence to go in to learn something that I had no idea what to do, because just because I'm Black doesn't mean I can dance. However, I did the dance classes, perfectly capable, but it's not the point.
Yes, it's not the point.
I want anyone else in the organization. And in fact, in this particular organization, I was teaching more classes than any of the other people, and I was supposed to be the group fitness coordinator. So I was doing administrative work on top of teaching more classes than anybody else in the thing, because that leader wanted me to teach all the Black stuff. He wasn't saying it like that, but that's essentially what it was. Yeah. And so to kind of show up every day and understanding somebody's trying to do you like that, and then, adapting, and then still excelling. And my other classes, every single class I taught was more popular. And what I would do, if I got on to, once I got one class started, he would remove me and put another instructor in there with the hope of giving them those numbers, and the people would just leave and follow. Yeah. So it just didn't matter. So I still moved to my authenticity. I did what I had to do, but it takes a lot of confidence to kind of just take that on the chin too when somebody's doing it like that. And I was very new in my career. So I just I accepted it, and with the hopes that things would get better, but really, really understanding that no matter how these people try to put me in a box, I'm still going to do the thing that makes the most sense for me. Yeah. And so, and that's been basically the story of my entire career. Each organization I go into, going back to that very totalitarian statement that I made earlier, these organizations I go in, and they are not happy when I bring them true data and metrics about what in fact it is that I'm actually seeing. And because of the package that I deliver it in, because I am often perceived as younger than what I am, and I'll tell you right now, I'm not ashamed about my age, but on purpose, I literally tell people, you're gonna have to cut me open and count the rings. I'm not telling you how old I am. Listen to the words that I'm saying. My age does not matter, right? So again, for me to even stand in that takes a certain amount of boldness to tell them, I don't have to tell you that information. Why are you asking me that? What does that have to do with the expertise and the information that I just
Nothing.
You know,
that's just personal curiosity. And it has no bearing on the work that's being done. But
so as I've moved along, it's just been I'm building that muscle, right? Confidence is a muscle too, right? It's something you can work on and kind of pour into yourself and make an intentional effort to understand how to contribute and recognizing your own value and not diminishing. So it's something that I'm constantly working on, because the line of work that I've gone into, I found that organizations value it depending on how confident they are in themselves.
It really makes a big difference. It starts with the leaders for sure. That's anything that we want to talk about, implement, put in place. It's leadership that drives it, and the better prepared that the leaders are, then the better for the organization, because it gives them the ability to assess and apply things as needed without taking it as a personal affront. But one thing that you mentioned earlier got me thinking about how sometimes there are aspects of yourself that become more solidified, especially in a work setting, with time. That the way you handle something when you're new in a career is a bit different. You learn from it. You are able to apply the lessons learned later in life, but as time goes on, you handle it differently, or it has a different effect. So the stereotyping, or people trying to fit you in a box, or projecting, because sometimes that's what it is. I'm projecting what I think is the case. You handled, in this case, with grace. You rose to the occasion. You did what had to be done, even though you could see that you were being treated differently. And then because of how you were, you had tremendous success with your clients, which was, you're interacting with people, they're having a great experience. So you learned from it, you made it something positive, but you could still see what was happening. How has what you were describing sounded like when you're not talking about age when it's not appropriate, and when you decide not to go with what someone else is saying that you should do. Over time, you have learned how to apply boundaries. You're saying it's a muscle you exercise, but you have learned how to apply boundaries over the course of time as well. It's not the way you handle things, 20 years ago. Some of it will remain the same, but some of it is different. But what I also heard you say was a lot of times early in your career, you were the only Black woman in so many spaces. Yes, confidence is a muscle you exercise, and there's confidence in you. The environment that you're in makes a difference as well. Some environments make it easier to build up your confidence, to get better in skills and all these other things, and just relax knowing that you are accepted and supported and so on. And some environments don't do that, which means there are times where you just have to pull from inside or pull from somewhere else. When you have needed confidence boosts, where do you get confidence boosts when you need it?
Through my family. My sister, mother, and I are pretty tight knit. We talk daily. If I don't talk to both of them each day, then it's probably alternating only because of schedules. But we really try to pour into each other. It's always been the three of us, and so my sister lets me let me know all the time I'm that chick, and she'll send me. I'm not in this, and don't get me internet. I respect Beyonce, and am not I know a lot of people consume a lot of it. I'm just not a person who's music wise, but I respect what the woman's doing and her hustle and things. And so my sister from time to time will send me like a Beyonce quote to let me know. And she calls me Big Sister Hot and Fine. So just to let me know I'm that chick whenever I need it. And so, but the three of us find a lot of solace and consideration, and I think grace in each other. And that has a lot to do with my mom, who she is. She was a DOD employee, was in family advocacy for the Army. And so a lot of her work was around social services and things like that. And so I think it just kind of set a precedent for how we conduct ourselves as a family unit and how we engage with the community outside of that. But whenever things are feeling weird, I can always turn inward with the family circle and kind of from there.
Yeah, when I talk about confidence boost, and sometimes it's a reminder, the people who remind you of who you are and what you're capable of, because you're not necessarily having those things that you are being validated where you are. So having people who can remind you of that just for a bit. Sometimes all it takes is just a brief touch point, and then you're like, yeah, I'm starting to get caught up.
My mom is the one who instilled that who you are and whose you are in me. So whenever you need it, she's gonna have even when you don't want a good word, she's gonna have a good word for you. You're like, wow, I just want to talk to you. Just tell me what this is, and then we'll have our good conversation around that too. But she's fun. They're a lot of fun. Both of them are a good time, and they know how to find humor in things too.
Yeah.
So you're thinking about it, just like doom and gloom, either one of them will find a way. They have an interesting sense of humor, and you have to really know them to hear it, because I'm the more social of the three of us.
Interestingly enough.
I know that's probably not a big shocker for anybody, but if you're talking to either of them, they are really funny. See, I'm not really funny. I have a good sense of humor, but the two of them are hilarious. But you just gotta, they get comfortable with you and they talk to you, and you'll just, it's just a funny thing, you know?
Yeah.
And my sister and I are so similar, but we can be so different, polar opposites too at the same time. But you can tell we're grew up the same way. There's an 8-year difference between us, but we have a lot of the same mentality, work ethic, values, things, because of our mom, she's a nucleus of that. So
yeah, no, your mom sounds amazing. Your sister sounds lovely, and the having an opportunity to laugh and share those moments, even when it's coming from times where you need that boost or reminder, is a beautiful thing. It's beautiful to have supportive that is love, a family rather that is supportive and loving. The family, authenticity, a bit of identity over time, talking about the energy that goes into the work that you do was what brought to mind the word resilience. What connection do you see, if any, between confidence and resilience?
I don't know that I see a connection between them. I think you can have resiliency on its own, and you're almost forced into it. And I'm speaking specifically for Black women right now. I can't speak to the experience of all Black women, but I'm speaking for Black women in that context of resilience. We're almost forced into it, regardless if we have confidence or not. Because if you are enduring experiences like I had, where the people say, you're going to teach these Black classes, right? And I'm saying, I don't even know how to I don't know how to dance. And no one else is being asked to do that. So what do? I go pull up YouTube videos and learn how to teach all these dances so I won't lose my job. So so I think as Black women, we are forced into that space, and whether we have confidence enough or not to deal with it, it's something that happens. I also, and you and I kind of touched on this conversation before, I'm mindful of resilience, right? And the word resiliency.
The word resilience, yeah.
Yeah, and again, when we're speaking in the frame or realm of the Black woman experience, just because of how other groups will commandeer it and expect it of us. And so I'm always thoughtful about that too. Resiliency is something that's great to have. I think no matter what your background is, it's something that you want to have and try to build towards it. But the expectation that Black women just kind of accept what people do because they're so resilient, you're so strong, that's not cool. That's the best way I can explain it. So I'm always like, your confidence and your resilience, I think you probably build more confidence as you become more resilient. If there's any correlation there, I think that's probably the possibility because again, as Black women, we're just forced to be that. We're not given the choice to be like, just fall down and just let it be what it is. Not in most instances, just not the case, you know? So, and I always tell people we can't afford to not be that way. And a good example of that is look at what's happening with the Black women in the workforce right now. So, and without us going into all the different things, it's just, we're forced into it. And it's unfair, like many things in life. And so I like to keep the two separated, not require anybody to have that. And if that's not the case for them, to be honest, I almost feel like they might be a little bit lucky because maybe they've had some people supporting them and propping them up and keeping them in good positions. So that might even be a gift if you haven't had to do it, right? And just and have people assuming that that's something you deal with. But I digress on that one. But just if there is any correlation as your confidence grows as you're forced into that resilience by the outside world and those that aren't living in the shell that we live in.
So along those lines, talking about letting the word stand by itself and not automatically attributing it to a certain group of people or making it or leaning into that mindset that it's an expectation of Black women. Resilience is the capacity to withstand or to recover quickly from difficulties, toughness, the ability to bounce back, basically, which is potentially an attribute for everyone. However, it can be damaging if you go into a relationship or an interaction with someone thinking by default that they should have resilience and have that be what guides how you treat them or how you interact with them. Oh, they should be resilient. They should be able to bounce back. Let me throw all these things at them because it's not an objective approach, especially in a work setting. You'll do undue damage because that means you're not expecting resilience of another person, then you're going to handle them differently. You are automatically creating a disparate experience for people, for those different people in that workplace. And then when you mentioned what's happened to Black women, the stat that comes to mind is that the last number I heard was 300,000 Black women out of work. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes, the last time I checked, it was 350,000.
350,000
plus, yeah, and it's just a direct frontal cost, you know, and and again, I'm about to speak very frankly again. This has been going on. It was just quiet. Now they're out loud.
Louder.
Like I've been living it my entire career. It's part of the reason, like when you met me, that's why I've always had something with HumanBn Strategies whenever I'm working with these larger groups. And I actually call, anytime I go into a larger organization, I just call them benefactors because we're going to see how long I can benefit before they get upset about some truth that I brought, or me moving in my authenticity, or somebody's feeling sad about their abilities, or their lower self-esteem is kicking. Like, how long is that going to last? And so, as a to give myself an easier landing space, I have maintained my own firm, you know, and we'll always do that. And one of the things that's really funny when I talk to different groups, you get in with these leaders and they're like, well, are you going to keep doing your own consulting on the side? Yes. Why are you worried about what I'm doing with my personal life? The reason why you want to hire me is because of all of these beautiful things that you see on my resume. And so you think, and I've even asked one group, so are you gonna, will you subsidize the income that I receive from that? Because I'm happy to pause the work if you're willing to subsidize my earnings from that. And you can imagine how that conversation went, because
I can imagine.
I know my value.
Yeah.
And it brings up the conversation even too when you're thinking about and you're going in these spaces too. I oftentimes, when I go in with these benefactors, I will negotiate all my money up front, because when I go in, that if there's anybody who's looking at things from a subjective standpoint, I won't receive raises. I won't receive any type of perks, benefits, anything. So from an employer, I haven't ever received like any special thank yous. I think recently I had one raise happen when I was here, when I initially moved to San Diego. And that's because another woman of color was in that space and she just rode for me. That was the first time I was ever reporting to a woman of color. And even with her, I went and made the business case. And then she was like, all right. And it took some convincing, but the point is she did it. I'm cool, she did it. That's more than anybody's ever done at that point in a 15-year career, right? And so, but in 15 years, I've only had one raise for all the work that I do. So oftentimes I'm setting my pay scale with each of these clients that I take on. So that's the other reason why HumanBn Strategies has just always been in the background and different iterations. My business name has changed over the years, but I'm happiest with the HumanBn Strategies because to the point where it has transitioned so people understand that it's overall business strategy versus us just talking about corporate wellness and workforce well-being.
Yes. And you've touched on, you've touched on quite a bit, but two main things that come to mind. One is that a lot of times our identity, I would say first that more and more people are becoming aware of the need to be defined by something other than your work. It can be very problematic, not only for the individual, but even in a leadership role, if everything that you are, or so much of what you are, is tied to what you do for a living in the context of your job and your title. That can be problematic as an individual, but when you have the work that moves you, your skills, your interests, running in parallel to everything that you're doing, for you, HumanBn Strategies, and again, I love that name, HumanBn Strategies, not losing sight of the humans and all the things that you're doing, but having that running in parallel is a constant reminder of who you are, what you can do, what you have done, so that no matter what transpires, come and go with the work, that you have that constant reminder. You have the things that you do and bring happening simultaneously, whether or not you are employed by someone else, that you can create and drive work and drive partnerships. That's such a powerful component of a sense of self, and it really does boost and bolster confidence along the way. The other thing that you said, talking about not assuming that you were going to get a raise, so that at any point, if the role change was eliminated or anything, that you had carved that out, is you came to that conclusion for a specific reason. However, it's a great approach to starting any business relationship, that you negotiate to start at the highest point, because everything else is a percentage of that first one. So rather than going in assuming, okay, I'll just accept this, and then in a few months make the case for a raise, or maybe in a year, there are no guarantees, but everything is a percentage of that. And oftentimes women have not negotiated the most at that beginning point. So even if you do, it's a great practice that people should be aware of and should adopt. Even if you are getting a raise, that raise is a percentage of that initial higher negotiated rate that you have. So those are a couple of excellent points and reminders. The sort of side hustle, side gig mindset and mentality is a lot more prevalent now. I'm sure that was not the case 20 years ago, 18 years ago, when you started HumanBn Strategies. And congratulations on 18 years, by the way. Congratulations.
That's hilarious, even thinking about it, because so 18 is when I officially made it official, but 2 years to that, because I started off with the group fitness stuff. And what I would do was go to sorority and fraternity row and just kind of hand out 2 years prior to that. So technically it's been 20 years. And I hand out these little flyers and drop them in the box, and then go into these different sororities and fraternities after their chapter meetings and do like little yoga sessions with them for them to do team building and things like that. And that's how it all kind of kicked off. And then I would never forget, there was one young lady after I was done with her sorority, she walks up, she's like, "Do you do personal training?" I said, "Well, no, I don't." She's like, "Well, I want you to be my personal trainer." So I will forever be grateful to her for just getting me to think outside the box on that, because she just liked me in general and liked my approach to things. And so after, I think maybe I took her on without having the certification at the time, and I was able to kind of use her as my beta test, and then I ended up getting that first certification probably a few months after that. But it was just so funny that she walked up to me and was just like, I like you for yoga, but also I would like for you to train me. And she just, and so it just to be even not really understanding where my business was going to go then. And but just at that time, it was just a college student wanting additional income coming in. And but I've always had that kind of grassroots gritty approach, and I'll tell people in a minute, they can just consider me a corporate thug, just just because of the way I move, the conversations that I'm willing to have that make other people uncomfortable, and then the fact that I am willing to make others uncomfortable, and I'm unapologetic about it, right? So, I'm very direct. Somewhere along the way, it became a bad thing for people to be direct, but I would much rather talk to somebody that's direct with me than someone who is just kind of, back and forth or wishy-washy or any of those things like that. And so, when we talk about even the side hustle component of it, I never thought of my entrepreneurial side as a side hustle. I've just been, I really do, when I say benefactors, they're secondary to anything I'm always doing. My center has always been my business, and it's had several different names, 7 different iterations, and coming to HumanBn Strategies. And I'm very proud of that branding, making that B for Brooke and the N for my middle name, and just really being able to do that. I think it's set a precedent. And again, going back to our statement of who you are and whose you are, I think it just makes sense. That human aspect ensures that I'm always taking others into consideration in all aspects in the work that I'm doing. So I'm very proud of where we are 20 years later.
I know there's so much to be proud of, and I've been a witness on a relatively short amount of time. In that short amount of time, I have been impressed. Another word that you and I have talked about is grit. And I looked up the definition of that too. Courage, resolve, strength of character. Courage, resolve, and strength of character, which I'd say does describe you as well. The courage to move forward regardless of the circumstance, because you have resolve, you are determined, and you're not, when you've come to that conclusion, it's based on factors and criteria. And so you're not sort of going with the wind with whatever is happening around you, and you have a conviction about what you're doing and to do things the right way, to do it well. And because of that, you stick to it. And that's the strength of character component. So when you mentioned the word grit, I thought, after looking it up, it's like, that's a great word. When we hear it, I don't think we necessarily hear it in that way because the way grit comes up, but courage, resolve, and strength of character. And I would say, yes, that very much describes you, Brooke Collins.
Well, I received that. And I tell you what, it describes a lot of the Black women that I know. And I would much rather people use that word than strong Black woman, or she's so resilient, because you got to think about grit. You have to think about what grit really is. To your point, looking up and finding that out. And the strength of character is the one that's, Black people, when we're in spaces, because of the way we were raised, we're going to conduct ourselves in a certain manner, generally speaking. I'm speaking very broadly here. There's exceptions to every rule, obviously, right? There's outliers. But generally speaking, those core values and things like that, when you start talking about strength of character, that's something that needs to be taken into consideration every time you're talking about any Black person in this country. Let's be clear, no matter what their background is. And so I think it's important that that word grit is out there. It's one that becomes part of the vocabulary, and you start thinking about people who that word actually fits, and substituted with some of these other synonyms that people try to just thrust upon us. whether it's necessary or whether it's even relevant or accurate, you know. So I'm glad you shared that definition there.
With that definition, it's definitely one to lean into, and that in telling the story of, you know, experiences in career and what you believe in, and bringing what you believe in into the work. You are the embodiment of the work that you do. So it will show up and it will touch everything that you are working on. And HumanBn Strategies and the work that you have continued to do and the conversations you have are already a big and bold thing. I love that the work has continued to evolve and is here, you know, 20 years later, 18 officially. So it's a lot that you're already working on. However, what is your next bold move?
The next bold move is this transition to community sector. And so really thinking about, as I mentioned before, I've spent the better part of my career sharing this skill set with organizations that aren't necessarily valuing the workforce that I aim to have their needs met. So they're not really valuing that. I feel that there's a lot of mistreatment, and I shared before that oftentimes the people that are experiencing that as mistreatment are people that look like you and I do. And so that for me is really infuriating. And so I started thinking about what it looks like to make a transition beyond that. And oftentimes, if you make well communities, they'll attract well organizations.
Yeah.
So you make the community well, and they'll bring in people. They'll bring in organizations, businesses, companies that want to pour into the well-being of the people that inhabit that community. And so I've been thinking about what that looks like, and through HumanBn Strategies, we talked about partnership earlier, and some of the things that I've been doing. I've been working with small businesses to kind of set up infrastructure so that they are driving revenue and commerce into different areas, into some of the historically Black neighborhoods here in San Diego. And really excited about this initiative, Experience in Canto, and what direction it might be able to go in. My hope is that by establishing great partnerships and what I'm calling collective activation, this neighborhood will be able to build a merchants association. And through that merchants association, the flagship businesses who have taken a risk and invested early on when the neighborhood is still in its growth and transition stage, they're investing early on. What I'm hoping is through forming Experience in Canto and then setting up a merchants association, they can go to the city, they can go to any advisories, they can go to the county and advocate for themselves and share what the needs are for the community. One of the ways that we are doing our collective activation is through activating vacant and underutilized storefronts and lots on Imperial Avenue. And there we're creating pop-up art galleries and installations where we're just illuminating and highlighting some of the work that's already happening in that community. Many of these businesses, the Mental Bar, Project New Village, the Block Club, Imperial Hustle Center, these are all businesses that really, through confidence, decided I'm gonna invest right here in this area. I see the potential here, you know, and they've already been doing all these different outreach efforts and things of that nature. And so I'm hoping by making this collective and partnering with them, we can amplify and showcase the work that they're already doing. There's some new businesses that are going to be coming to the area. There's a book and wine bar in Vino that's going to be coming through, and it's fantastic. I'm really excited to see where that goes. It's a business that doesn't exist, not in that format here in San Diego. So I'm excited to see what Miss Marilyn does there. And I'm just hoping when everything is solidified, Experience in Canto becomes part of the conversation, the tourism aspect. And so now this is a solidified art district, booming and bustling commerce coming through there. Because again, if you aren't aware, people bring commerce and not the other way around.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are pouring into these spaces, activating things that are empty and underutilized, show that the people are existing and you're creating wellness by activating these spaces.
Yeah.
And so I'm just excited to be taking those same principles and really thinking about what it looks like from a true infrastructure standpoint, from the community sector, and then for overall well-being for the people of those communities.
It's incredible. What it has entailed is really getting to understand a community, a group of people, really getting to know people, and aligning that with what is possible and matching that to partnerships so that you can spotlight the things that already exist there and build upon what's there. And I love that expression about the well-being of the community, that those well communities will then draw the types of organizations that support them as well. And you said it's people that bring the commerce.
Yep.
That's
no
awesome.
other way to do it. And it's so funny because people assume if you just you go in somewhere and just put something there, things will happen. But you think about all the spaces you've seen where somebody went in and bought up that plot of land and there's nothing happening there.
Yeah.
So one, you haven't invested in that community in any way. So already this is an organization that's not well because they did not think about how it would affect the individuals that are in that surrounding community. Mm-hmm. So being able to have those types of conversations and encouraging people to do interest surveys and really go out and have conversations with those that could potentially benefit or those that it could be an adherence to. Listen to what they're saying, get an understanding of what the true needs are. And, and understand that many groups, and I'll speak specifically to the Black community right now, people come into the communities and will take advantage and exploit and all these things. And so my hope by just going in and being who I say I am and honoring my word and keeping my word, that it will make it easier for the next community to meet someone that's similar and be able to engage. If it's not me, I want the next person, the next HumanBn Strategies in their own right to go through and do something similar in other communities to continue to help those neighborhoods flourish.
You're talking about you being who you are and going and do this, and the intention behind it is also a reminder how the strength of character can really push things forward. Your consistency, your being exactly who you say you are, doing what you say you will do, meaning what you say and saying what you mean, really puts the people that you're interacting with at an advantage, that they know that Brooke means what she says what she means, and will do exactly, and will communicate. That lends, a lot of times there's confidence in yourself, but also your ability to rely on what's around you. That means you're lending them confidence because of that consistency, which is a very powerful thing. It's understandable to be hesitant and skeptical, but when someone shows you, I am exactly who you see, I will do the things that I will do, I mean what I say, and I'm here, let's move together in this. It's a very powerful thing for someone to encounter and to be able to work with. So kudos to you for not only what you're doing, but how you're doing it.
Oh, I appreciate that. I appreciate you saying that, and I love that. I think that's the perfect way to cap off our conversation, is lending confidence.
Absolutely.
I think that was beautifully put, and I appreciate that, and I thank you for planting that seed and kind of putting that out there, the concept.
Absolutely. And since you listed businesses, with any links that you send that have to do with what you have just mentioned, we'll include that in the description as well. But I thank you for taking the time, having this conversation. I'm glad we were finally able to have the conversation and touch on so much. This has really been a robust conversation, and I suspect that we can take a couple of slivers of it and talk about it more in the future, and maybe come back after and say what the outcome of this bold move has been, I
would love to share the debrief, right?
Yes.
So we can do the next phase to get get this community set up, because this is all proof of concept, right?
There we go.
I hadn't done this kind of work before.
Confidence Conversation with Brooke Part 2.
Yeah.
Out in the community. Yes, let's make it happen. Thanks again,
I
Brooke.
love
It has been lovely having a conversation with you as always. Thanks for the illumination and the wisdom, the authenticity that you bring to every conversation.
Oh, you have been a joy. I've enjoyed this so much. We should have done it sooner, but we're here now. We won't.
We've done it now.
Mwah! Love it.
Thank you, Brooke.